Now, the fourth International Africa Development Forum came to a close in Casablanca, Morocco, where delegates agreeing to cooperate in order to improve the continent's agriculture and electricity sectors. Now, those at the forum emphasized the need to exchange resources, technology and knowledge between South-South countries, as well as transforming the agricultural sector from just a mere subsistence activity to a growth driver for lots of economies right across Africa.
Je crois que les échanges ont été extrêmement intéressants.
I think that the exchange today was extremely interesting and it resulted in a number of recommendations. They've been put together into an official document which will be distributed amongst the governments of the different countries present over the 2 days.
Deuxième élément important, c'est que
during the forum, we organized B2B meetings which totaled 2,400 working meetings between African enterprises and international organizations. We are optimistic we will see results, the conclusion of cooperation agreements for investment and the development of intra-African commerce.
Nous sommes très optimistes pour la conclusion d'accords de coopération.
Now, Uche Koronko has been covering the conference in Casablanca. She's live from that location right now. Uche, now that the conference has finally come to a close, what are the main resolutions from that event?
Well, Rama, it's been an intense 2 days, a lot of one-on-one meetings and, of course, panel discussions going on. And as Mr. El-Katani is said, there are 2,400 meetings taking place between Africa's countries, between business leaders from the private sector and, of course, the international community as well. And the main focus of this meeting was finding an execution plan in Africa's agriculture and power. Now, so here's some of the key takeaways from the conference. Delegates realized the fact that Africa's agriculture and power sector are growing at a slower pace, of course, than Africa's economies. They mentioned the fact that they need to mobilize financing and, of course, improve on the financing models on ground. They also talked about the role of the public and private sector. Of course, the public sector's role as a regulator and as a subsidizer, and the private sector's role as a provider of financing in these different sectors. Another thing that came was, what does the international community, what do international organizations bring to the table? And it's interesting to note that a lot of international organizations here said that the funding is available, but it's the projects that are lacking. In fact, Europe provides about $6 billion of funding to Africa's development projects. However, only half of that is actually used. Why? Because there's a lack of projects on ground. Now, the key aim of the conference was to promote South-South cooperation and, of course, the sharing of political know-how, technical competencies, and, of course, banking networks from across the continent. Interesting to note, barely 2 hours ago, we saw 11 countries sign an MOU on mutual cooperation between the Africa Trade Promotion organizations from these 11 countries. We saw 4 other countries joining that organization, and a plan to meet in November this year to sort of firm up some of the decisions made at this conference. Now, of course, they talked about some of the Africa's success stories. For example, we talked about Morocco's new project, which is basically a desert mega project that harnesses wind and solar energy, and it will be one of the largest solar projects in the world. It's currently in phase 1. They also talked about the Africa 50 Infrastructure Fund, which is by the African Development Bank, and talked about how that project has been able to mobilize funds in different infrastructure areas on the continent. In fact, I spoke with the CEO, Alassane Abba, earlier about what exactly the project is up to right now and what next for the Africa 50 Fund. Take a look.
Africa 50 is progressing quite well. As you know, this is a new institution. It has a lot of requirements. One, in terms of institutional development, it requires recruiting people, getting the policies, and putting in place the framework. This is one aspect we are progressing quite well. The second aspect is on the business development. In terms of business development, I can tell you today, our pipeline of project is quite full and our processing is progressing, and we expect by the end of the year 2016 to realize at least 10 projects. Another aspect is the fundraising. This is a continuous activities we are progressing. Our assessment is quite positive in terms of the level of the implementation and the level of the progress that we realize. And more we will see Africa 50 with a lot of capacity and doing the right business.
So what next for the Africa 50 project? What specifically are you doing in terms of agriculture and electrification on the continent?
See, we are not in agriculture. We are more on the electricity. On electricity, we are targeting first renewable energy and working with our what we call the usual partners. And we have a lot of projects in solar power plant, in Senegal, in Morocco, in Egypt, and we have a lot of hydro dam projects in Central Africa and a lot of wind power projects in East Africa. I think when you will see it's well spread across Africa, and we are progressing and we are processing our project.
Now, as Mohamed El-Kitani said earlier, they've put together recommendations made at the conference into an official paper, passed it amongst African governments, and there's a hope that we'll see some conclusions come up from this conference soon enough. Back to you, Rama.
Indeed, we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for that. That's Sucha Karonko, of course, live in Casablanca.